At a glittering gala meant to seal a billion-dollar deal, Maya Johnson, a self-made black woman CEO, faces the unthinkable: public humiliation and a slap from Chad Sterling, heir to a powerful white billionaire dynasty. Instead of silence, Maya rises. She calls out the injustice before a stunned crowd and walks out, tearing apart the Sterling family's prized contract. What follows is a storm of viral outrage, media frenzy, and moral reckoning, as the world witnesses systemic racism, corruption, and abuse of power unfold. The Sterling empire crumbles. Scandals, congressional hearings, arrests, and betrayals consume them. Meanwhile, Maya's defiance transforms into a movement, earning her global respect and partnerships larger than the one she walked away from. By the end, poetic justice prevails. The dynasty that tried to erase her is erased instead, and Maya emerges not just as a CEO, but as a symbol of resistance, dignity, and unstoppable power. The black car slid up the marble steps of the Sterling estate, headlights cutting through the evening mist. The gala was already alive, chandeliers blazing through tall windows, champagne laughter spilling into the night. Maya Johnson stepped out. Her dress was sleek, professional elegance wrapped in midnight blue silk. Her presence carried weight, not just as CEO of JTECH Global, but as a black woman walking alone into a dynasty built on whiteness and power. The valet hesitated, a moment too long before taking her keys. Eyes lingered, cataloging her as if she were an anomaly rather than a guest of honor. Inside, whispers started before she even reached the grand hall. That's her, the tech woman, self-made, must have had some government help. She looks confident. Confidence. The word carried resentment when spoken here. At the staircase, Evelyn Sterling, matriarch, pristine in silver sequins, extended a manicured hand. Evelyn smiling, voice sharp as glass. Ms. Johnson, so delighted you could join us. I do hope the drive wasn't overwhelming. Maya steady, with a nod. Traffic was light. Thank you for inviting me. Double quotes. Evelyn squeezing her hand just a little too long. We're always eager to support promising ventures. Your little company has certainly made noise. Maya caught the slip, little company, but didn't flinch. Maya, noise is one word for innovation. A flicker in Evelyn's eyes, annoyance, quickly hidden behind a polished laugh. They moved toward the ballroom. The room itself glimmered with wealth. Crystal chandeliers, white marble columns, violins weaving through chatter. But beneath the shimmer was the suffocating awareness of Maya's difference. Every stare reminded her she was a trespasser in their world. Despite her billion-dollar contract at the bar, Chad Sterling leaned, glass in hand, golden hair, arrogant smirk, entitlement dripping with every movement. Chad mocked surprise. Ah, the famous Maya Johnson, the disruptor. Father says you've managed to build quite the empire. Impressive for someone without pedigree. Maya meeting his eyes. Empires aren't built on pedigrees. They're built on work. Chad laughing, sipping whiskey touche. Still, luck must have been on your side. Not everyone can rise up from nothing. Maya calm, deliberate. Nothing doesn't scare me. Staying nothing does. The words silenced his smirk for a fraction of a second. Then the music swelled. Guests drifting toward the dining hall. Maya followed, each step echoing with quiet defiance. She wasn't just walking into dinner, she was walking into a battlefield, and she knew it. The dining hall was a cathedral of wealth. A chandelier spilled golden light across a table that seemed to stretch forever. Fine china glistened, crystal glasses sparkled. Waiters in white gloves glided silently. Maya sat near the center, where Evelyn Sterling had carefully placed her, close enough to be on display, far enough from the true circle of power. Conversation flowed around her, sharp with undertones. Senator Hawthorne leaning forward, smile too wide. So, Ms. Johnson, I've been reading about your company. Quite the undertaking. But tell me, do you really think JTech can handle billion-dollar logistics? Or will you subcontract to the big boys when things get too complicated? A ripple of laughter circled the table. Maya steady, cutting through. We don't subcontract competence. We build it. The senator chuckled, pretending to be charmed, but his eyes narrowed. Across the table, Evelyn dabbed her lips with a napkin, gaze fixed on Maya. Evelyn voice sweet, barbed. Of course, we admire ambition, but surely you must feel grateful. Our family doesn't often take risks on outsiders, especially those without, shall we say, established lineage. The word outsiders lingered like smoke. Maya, soft but firm. Gratitude has its place, but this partnership isn't charity. It's strategy. A pause. Utensils clink. Someone coughed to break the tension. Evelyn smiled, brittle as porcelain. Chad leaned in, smirking. Chad, strategy. Or maybe just timing. You're trending right now, Maya. Diversity sells. People love a decorative story. Gasps, laughter, some nervous, some approving. Maya's hand tightened around her glass. She forced her voice. Even Maya. Decorations are meant to be admired, but they break easily. I prefer to build things that last. Chad's smirk faltered. He leaned back, mocking applause. The violinists shifted into something lighter, almost masking the undercurrent of hostility. But every comment felt like a knife. Evelyn turning to her peers. You know, when I started in business, women didn't have these opportunities. But of course, times change. Some rise, some fall. Her smile landed on Maya, pointed and cruel. Maya quietly. Rising is never the problem. It's the hands trying to pull you down that make it harder. A silence fell again, broken by forced laughter. The senator returned, unwilling to let her breathe. Senator Hawthorne, tell me, Ms. Johnson, where did you study? I imagine the scholarships were generous. Maya, I earned my education, and I paid for it in more ways than you can imagine. He blinked, then laughed as though she'd told a joke. Waiters placed dishes, caviar, truffle risotto, seared duck. The guests ate as though the conversation hadn't drawn blood. Maya picked at her plate, appetite muted. She felt the weight of stares, every glance a reminder she didn't belong in their world. Yet here she was, seated at their table. The narration whispered in her own mind, they want you small, they want you grateful, they want you silent. But she wasn't built to be silent. Chad raised his glass, smirk returning. Chad, 2 new partnerships. May they be entertaining. Maya meeting his toast without lifting her glass. To respect, without it, there is no partnership. The words hung in the air, heavy, undeniable. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Evelyn clapped lightly, shifting the mood. Evelyn, such fire. Well, let us hope the evening continues. Smoothly, but beneath her polished tone, something darker stirred. The knives were out, and Maya knew this dinner was only the beginning. The ballroom glittered, violins rising, as couples drifted toward the dance floor. The air was perfumed with champagne and arrogance. Maya stood at the edge, watching the swirl of gowns and tuxedos. She hadn't come to dance, she had come for business. But in rooms like this, spectacle was part of survival. And Chad Sterling was watching her. He strode across the polished floor, whiskey in hand, grin, lazy but eyes sharp. The crowd parted as though the air carried a crown. He stopped before her, extending a hand. Chad mock courtesy. Care to dance, Ms. Johnson? Or, are you afraid of being out of step? Maya, cool, unmoving. I didn't come here for games. Chad leaning closer, smirk widening. Everything's a game, darling, especially when you're sitting at our table. Whispers stirred around them. Cameras flashed. Society reporters hungry for drama. Maya considered refusing, but the unspoken rule pressed in. A woman declining a Sterling's invitation was a declaration of war. She lifted her chin, placed her hand in his, and let him lead her onto the floor. The orchestra swelled. Chad spun her too fast, too close, his grip uncomfortably tight. Chad low voice, mocking, you walk in here like you belong, but let's be honest, people like you don't get seats at this table unless we set them. Maya steady, though her pulse spiked. I earned my place. No one gave it to me. Double quotes. Chad laughing. Oh, come on, be honest. Diversity's the word of the decade. You're the perfect poster. A little color in the photo makes us look progressive. Maya's jaw clenched. Maya, you mistake visibility for validation. I don't need yours. Chad twirled her sharply, forcing her to stumble before catching her. Gasps echoed. His grin widened. Chad loud enough for those nearby. Feisty. No wonder father says you're good at. Hustling. Laughter rippled cruelly. Maya froze. The word hung heavy. Hustling, loaded with centuries of dismissal. She pulled her hand from his, voice rising above the music. Maya, respect me, or leave me alone. The violins faltered. Guests turned, curiosity sharpening. Silence pressed against the chandeliers. Chad's smirk hardened. He stepped closer, eyes burning with entitled rage. Chad snarling, low, you don't get to tell me what to do. Not here, not ever. And then the slap cracked across the ballroom like a gunshot. Maya's head snapped to the side, her cheek stinging, skin burning. The orchestra stopped, glasses froze midair. The silence was suffocating. Her breath caught, not from pain, but from the raw humiliation of it. Public, deliberate, meant to put her in her place. For a moment, no one moved. Then, Evelyn Sterling rose, calm as a queen, surveying chaos. Evelyn cool, dismissive. Chad, dear, sit down. You know how sensitive some people can be. Some people. The words slithered across the silence. A few nervous chuckles rose, quickly smothered. Cameras clicked again, some brazen, others hidden behind clutched phones. The evidence was already leaving the room. Maya stood still, her pulse pounding in her ears. Her cheek throbbed, but her gaze remained steady. She scanned the crowd, the senator smirking faintly, the investors pretending to sip wine, the journalists scribbling furiously, the women in gowns averting their eyes. Not one person moved to defend her. The silence was worse than the slap. It was consent. Chad leaned back, grinning as though he'd won. Chad mocking, loud, see, nothing to it. She knows her place now. More laughter, thin, brittle, but it carried. Maya's chest tightened. Shame and fury collided, but beneath them, clarity sharpened. This was no partnership. This was spectacle, domination, control. She straightened. The sting on her cheek felt like fire branding truth into her skin. She didn't speak. Not yet. Her silence wasn't submission. It was preparation. And as she walked off the floor, the Sterling Empire didn't realize it, but the crack in their dynasty had just split wide open. The ballroom air was heavy, thick with shame that wasn't hers to carry. Maya stood at the edge of the dance floor, cheeks still throbbing where Chad's hand had landed. The crowd had already begun its quiet erasure, laughter forced, conversations resuming, violins tuning back into motion as if humiliation could be swallowed with champagne. But Maya wasn't going to swallow it. She lifted her chin, the weight of 100 stares pressing against her. Every eye wanted her to disappear, to retreat into silence. Instead, she stepped forward. The violins faltered again. Maya, clear, steady. I came here tonight as a partner, a leader, a woman who built something from nothing. Murmurs swept the room. Heads turned. Some guests looked away, uncomfortable with the words slicing through their pretense. Maya voice sharpening. And in return, I was mocked, belittled, and struck, not in private, but here, before all of you. Gasps. Someone whispered, she's making a scene. Maya turning, eyes scanning the room. No. The scene was made when silence fell after violence. The scene was made when respect was treated as optional, when dignity was treated as expendable. Evelyn Sterling rose from her chair, hands poised in false calm. Evelyn cutting in, tight smile. Miss Johnson, let us not dramatize these events. Can Maya interrupting, firm, no. Mrs. Sterling, what happened here cannot be dressed in silk and passed off as a misunderstanding. The room stiffened. Evelyn's smile cracked for a fraction of a second. Maya's voice carried, no longer just for herself. Maya, you want gratitude. You want me to bow for a seat at your table. No deal is worth my silence. No contract is worth my dignity. She reached for her clutch. Calm movements, cutting sharper than rage. Maya, final words, cold, deliberate. Consider our negotiations terminated. JTech will never sign with Sterling Enterprises. Not now, not ever. A collective gasp. A glass shattered somewhere at the far end of the hall. Chad surged forward, but Evelyn's hand shot out, holding him back with iron disguised as grace. Chad snarling, you'll regret this. Do you know what walking away from us means? Maya turned to face him fully, her cheeks still red, her eyes blazing. Maya, yes. It means freedom, it means truth, and it means you've already lost. She walked toward the grand doors, every step echoing like a verdict. Guests parted without a word, the silence now hers to command. Some looked at her with shame, others with envy, a few, quietly, with admiration they dared not voice. The heavy doors swung open, spilling cool night air into the suffocating hall. Maya didn't look back, not once. And in that act, walking away from a billion-dollar deal with her dignity intact, she rewrote the rules of power. The slap had been meant to diminish her. Instead, it became the spark that would burn their empire down. By dawn, the Sterling Gala was no longer a glittering memory of wealth and power. It was a headline. The first video appeared on Twitter just after midnight, shaky phone footage capturing Chad's hand striking Maya across the face, the audible gasp of the crowd, Evelyn's chilling dismissal. Some people can be so sensitive. By 6 a.m., the video had been shared millions of times. Hashtags surged. Hashtag stand with Maya. Hashtag Sterling slap. Hashtag silence is consent news. Anchors spoke in urgent tones, replaying the clip again and again. Talk shows dissected every word, every gesture. Maya's phone buzzed nonstop, her inbox flooded with messages, some supportive, others laced with venom. In her apartment, Maya sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through the tidal wave of reactions. Text from her assistant, Lena Both, "You're trending worldwide. Everyone's calling for a statement. Are you okay?" Maya stared at the screen, cheeks still tender, eyes burning from lack of sleep. Was she okay? No. But survival had never waited for comfort. She typed back, "I'll speak when I'm ready. For now, silence is louder." At Sterling Enterprises headquarters, chaos reigned. Evelyn Sterling sat at the head of a mahogany table, surrounded by lawyers, PR strategists, and political fixers. Her diamond brooch glittered under the harsh light. PR executive nervous, sweating. The videos everywhere. "We need a statement, maybe an apology from Chad." Damage control. Evelyn cutting him off. "No apologies. We do not bow. We reframe. Spin it as overblown." She overreacted. Emotionally. Chad slouched, smirking. "It was just a joke. People are so dramatic. A slap isn't a crime." Lawyer grim. "Actually, Chad, it is. And given the optics, we could be looking at lawsuits. Investors are calling. Some are threatening to pull funding." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Evelyn, then remind them who built their fortunes. Remind them they need us more than we need them." But even she could feel it. The empire was shifting under her feet. Meanwhile, Maya's silence was interpreted as strength. Activists rallied. Black women across industries shared stories of humiliation, erasure, violence. Her inbox filled with letters from strangers. "You spoke for all of us when you walked out. They've treated us this way for generations. Thank you for not staying quiet." But with praise came backlash. Trolls flooded her mentions with slurs, conspiracy theories, threats. Comment on social media. "She should be grateful she was even invited." Another, "She ruined herself. Who walks away from $1 billion?" Maya scrolled, then set her phone down. The noise was deafening, but the truth pulsed steady beneath it. The world had seen. They couldn't unsee. Later that day, Lena arrived with coffee and determination. "Lena, you need to respond. Everyone's waiting for your voice." Maya shook her head. "Maya, not yet. Let them argue. Let them reveal themselves. When I speak, it won't be reaction. It'll be truth." Lena nodded, though worry lingered in her eyes. On television, Chad Sterling gave his first interview, seated casually on a leather chair, arrogance intact. Chad smirking. "People are blowing this out of proportion. It was just playful. A misunderstanding. Honestly, I think she enjoyed the attention." The anchor shifted uncomfortably, but the clip spread instantly, fueling outrage. Hashtag Sterling Boy began trending, filled with side-by-side comparisons. Maya's poised silence against Chad's sneer. Investors started pulling statements. Investor on CNBC. "We cannot align with an organization that condones this behavior. Effective immediately, we're suspending Sterling contracts." Evelyn's phone rang relentlessly, but every conversation ended the same. Doubt, withdrawal, hesitation. The empire was bleeding. At night, Maya finally opened her laptop. A draft document glowed on the screen. She typed, paused, deleted, then began again. Maya soft, to herself. "They wanted silence. They got spectacle. But I'll give them truth." She leaned forward, words flowing like fire. What happened at the Sterling Gala was not a misunderstanding. It was not a joke. It was an act of violence, public and deliberate. What followed, the silence of those who watched, the excuses of those in power, is part of a larger sickness. We cannot build futures on silence. We cannot build partnerships on humiliation. I walked away not from wealth, but from chains, and I will never apologize for choosing dignity over dollars. She stared at the words, then hit save. Tomorrow, she would release them, and tomorrow, the storm would double. But tonight, for the first time since the slap, Maya breathed without choking. By the third day, the slap was no longer the story. It was the crack that let everything else pour out. Newsrooms across the country seized the moment. If Chad Sterling could humiliate a black woman on camera, what else had the family hidden behind wealth and influence? Investigative journalists smelled blood. The New York Journal dropped the first bombshell. Anchor on TV, reading headline, "Sterling Enterprises accused of funneling funds through shell companies to bribe officials. Whistleblowers claim a decade of fraud." Maya watched from her office, coffee cooling untouched on her desk. Each word landed heavy. Lena, eyes wide. This is bigger than I thought. They're going after everything. Maya didn't answer. She simply watched. The following day, The Guardian published leaked emails. Evelyn Sterling herself had approved exploitative labor contracts overseas, children working for shifts in Sterling factories while she donated millions to youth education, charities. Clips went viral. Evelyn in a glittering gown, preaching about philanthropy, while footage of sweatshops rolled beside her. Then came the lawsuits. Former employees stepped forward. A driver who claimed Chad once beat him in a drunken rage. A secretary who alleged Evelyn ordered her to shred documents tied to campaign donations. An assistant who said she was paid to stay silent about assaults at Sterling-hosted parties. One by one, voices long buried rose to the surface. And always, in the background, the slap replayed, the spark that had given them permission to speak. On social media, Maya's name became inseparable from the reckoning. Tweet from an activist, @MayaJTech, didn't just walk away from a billion-dollar deal, she walked us into the truth. Hashtag exposed Sterling's comment thread under video. She stood alone and the world followed. Finally, they're paying for decades of silence. Maya scrolled slowly, unease and pride tangled together. She hadn't asked for this role, but she couldn't deny it anymore. She had become a symbol. Inside the Sterling mansion, the walls were closing in. Lawyer Grimm, at late-night meeting, we're looking at criminal investigations. The DOJ is circling. If the subpoenas hit, it won't stop at fines. Evelyn, snapping, voice cracking for the first time. Unacceptable. We built this country. They need us. PR executive hesitant. Mrs. Sterling, the public doesn't see titans. They see tyrants. Every day this grows worse. Chad laughed, lounging in his chair. Chad, this is all because of her. Maya, if she'd just played along. Lawyer cutting in. If you hadn't put your hands on her in front of cameras, none of this would have had oxygen. Chad's smirk faltered. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, venomous. For the first time, blame circled the room, not outward, but inward. Maya gave her first official interview on live television. Interviewer gentle, but firm. Miss Johnson, some say you ignited a movement. Do you feel responsible for what's happening to this? Maya's voice was calm, measured. Maya, I feel responsible for telling the truth. What happens after truth is revealed, that belongs to the world, not just me. Interviewer, some call you brave, others say reckless. Maya smiled faintly. Maya, it's only reckless when the powerful are the ones at risk. Funny how that works. The clip aired worldwide. Millions watched her unflinching gaze. Her company's stock soared. Sterling Enterprises plummeted by the end of the week. Congressional committees announced hearings. Evelyn Sterling was subpoenaed. Chad was formally under investigation for multiple assaults. His arrogant interviews used as evidence of character. The dynasty that had stood for generations now trembled, foundations rotting in public view. And behind every headline, one truth remained unshakable. It all began with a slap, and a woman who refused to bow. The day Chad Sterling was arrested, the cameras swarmed like vultures. He emerged from the mansion in handcuffs, designer suit wrinkled, hair disheveled. For the first time in his life, he looked small. Reporters shouted questions as police led him to the car. Reporter, Chad, do you deny the charges? Chad snapping, red-faced. This is a witch hunt. I'm the victim here. His voice cracked as he shoved against the officers. But the cameras captured everything. The sneer, the rage, the unraveling of privilege. Maya watched the footage from her office, hands folded tightly in her lap. She wasn't smiling, though satisfaction burned low in her chest. Lena softly, standing behind her, he's really going down. After all these years, Maya didn't look away from the screen. Maya, it's not just him, it's everything he represents. In Congress, Evelyn Sterling sat under harsh fluorescent lights, stripped of her gowns and glitter, answering questions she once thought beneath her. Senator reading, Mrs. Sterling, is it true your company knowingly exploited child labor while claiming philanthropic work in education? Evelyn icy, trying to maintain control. Our overseas partners made independent decisions. Sterling Enterprises cannot be held responsible for. Senator cutting in. Emails show your direct authorization. Do you deny sending them? The hearing room buzzed. Cameras clicked. Evelyn's face twitched, the first fracture in her mask of control. Meanwhile, leaked recordings surfaced. Board members laughed about buying politicians. Internal memos revealed environmental destruction covered up for profit. Every revelation piled like bricks on the collapsing empire. Stock prices plummeted. Investors fled. Lawsuits multiplied. The name Sterling became poison. Maya sat for her second televised interview, this time with international press. Interviewer: when you walked out of that gala, did you know this would happen? Maya pausing, steady: I knew silence would keep it happening. That was enough. Interviewer: do you feel vindicated? Maya's gaze dropped for a moment. The memory of the slap, the silence of the crowd, the ache in her chest, it still lived inside her. Maya quietly: vindication doesn't erase pain, but it makes the pain mean something. Across the country, protests flared. Young people carried signs. Respect is not optional. Silence is consent. From slap to revolution, Maya's face appeared on murals, her quotes circulating online. She hadn't chosen to be a movement, but movements often began with those who refused to bow. Back at the Sterling estate, Evelyn held a late-night meeting with her dwindling circle. Board member cold. Investors are gone. Partners are suing. We're finished. Evelyn snapping, desperate. Sterlings do not fall. We built this world. Board member interrupting. And now the world is tearing you down. We're resigning. Effective immediately. One by one, chairs scraped back. Doors closed. Evelyn was left alone in the echoing room. The sound of her empire's death louder than any slap. News networks aired Chad's mugshot beside Maya's poised photographs. The contrast was brutal, undeniable. Arrogance undone by justice, dignity crowned by truth. Commentators spoke of a cultural shift, of an empire undone by its own hubris. For Maya, the headlines weren't victory, they were survival, writ large. That evening, Lena found her on the balcony of JTEX's headquarters, city lights sprawling below. Lena, you did it, you broke them. Maya shook her head slowly. Maya, no, they broke themselves. All I did was refuse to be part of the lie. The wind tugged at her hair. In the silence, she let herself breathe, finally, without the weight of their gaze. But deep inside, she knew this was not the end. Justice was never final, never absolute. Still, tonight, watching the empire collapse, Maya felt the truth steady in her chest. Resistance had power, silence had cost, and the world was finally beginning to learn the difference. Months later, the world looked different. Sterling Enterprises was a husk of its former self. Stocks gutted, contracts dissolved, board members gone. Their estate sat quiet, paparazzi still circling like scavengers over a fallen beast. Evelyn faced trial dates. Chad awaited sentencing in a county jail, his arrogance reduced to orange scrubs and concrete walls. But Maya was rising. On a crisp autumn morning, she walked a red carpet outside the World Tech Summit. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward. This time, the lenses were not hungry for scandal. They were hungry for her. She wore a tailored white suit, sharp as armor, the opposite of the blue silk she had worn the night of the gala. Then, she had been their guest. Tonight, she was the host. Reporter calling out, Ms. Johnson, how does it feel to announce the new partnership? Maya, smiling, measured, it feels earned. Inside the summit, the announcement stunned the industry. JTech Global had secured a $1.2 billion partnership with an international coalition of firms committed to ethical technology. Investors erupted in applause. Cameras clicked. Maya stood at the podium, her voice carrying, Maya, when we talk about innovation, it cannot be built on exploitation. It cannot be built on humiliation. True progress demands dignity for every hand that builds, every mind that creates. The audience rose in a standing ovation, back in the shadows of her ruined mansion. Evelyn Sterling watched the broadcast, the television's glow reflected in her weary eyes. Once, she had commanded rooms like that with a snap of her fingers. Now, no one returned her calls. She turned off the screen. Silence, pressing down like judgment. For the first time in her life, Evelyn Sterling was irrelevant. Meanwhile, in prison, Chad's name trended for the last time. Not for power, not for wealth, but for sentencing. Assault charges, fraud ties, corruption exposed. The heir of an empire reduced to a cautionary tale. The internet rejoiced in memes, but beneath the laughter was something deeper. The satisfaction of seeing arrogance finally caged. At the summit's afterparty, Maya moved through the crowd of allies, investors, activists, entrepreneurs. Voices congratulated her, but it was Lena's quiet smile that cut through the noise. Lena, from slap to summit, you rewrote the ending. Maya's gaze drifted across the room to the sea of diverse faces, leaders who had stood with her when she chose dignity over wealth. Maya softly. No, we rewrote it, together. Later, she stepped onto the balcony, city lights stretching endlessly. She closed her eyes, the cool air brushing against her face. The memory of the slap still lingered, the sting, the silence, the shame. But now, it wasn't just pain, it was proof. Proof that when you refuse to bow, you can bend the world instead. A reporter approached, microphone trembling in awe. Reporter, Ms. Johnson, one last question. If you could say anything to the Sterlings tonight, what would it be? Maya opened her eyes, steady and unflinching. Maya, I would say nothing at all, because silence is what they gave me, and look what it cost them. The reporter swallowed hard, words failing. Maya turned back, toward the lights, shoulders straight, presence unshakable. That night, headlines crowned her, not just as a CEO, but as a symbol. From humiliation to history, Maya Johnson reshapes the game, poetic justice, the slap that toppled a dynasty. And across the world, millions repeated her words, passing them like scripture. No contract is worth my dignity. The slap had been meant to erase her. Instead, it erased them.